Give me your initial impressions before we get to four downs. What you think of Josh Heupel as a quarterback guru, a quarterback whisperer, whatever you want to call it, as compared to what Tennessee fans and I thought coming into Tennessee that he would be. I thought that he was going to end up being one of the better quarterback coaches in the nation. I think that you look at history, that's very much in doubt. What are your initial impressions when he was hired, and then what are your impressions now?
My impressions when he was hired was the quarterbacks would put up, he can get quarterbacks to put up video game numbers, but they may not always translate to wins. Now, I'll say this. I looked at Josh Heupel's history, and so I tracked back to after he was fired by Oklahoma, because for those who don't know the history of Josh Heupel, this offense that he runs now, he did not run at Oklahoma. He never ran it as Oklahoma's offensive coordinator. He ran.
To be clear, how is it different?
The offense he ran at Oklahoma was much more air raid oriented. And the reason that, so there weren't RPOs and certain things like that. That didn't, and he wasn't using the wide splits. That happened because, and this is the story behind it. In 2015, after he was fired, he went to Utah State for a year. Barry Odom, to Barry Odom's credit, wanted.
That's something we've never said on the show before. Go ahead.
Yes, exactly. Hired Josh Heupel as offensive coordinator, and Josh Heupel brought in, for those who don't know, a man named Joe John Finley, who is now the Oklahoma offensive coordinator, funny enough, who he had worked with at Oklahoma. Finley was Baylor's offensive quality control coach and analyst in 2015. Heupel and Finley worked together to develop this offense, which combines kind of the Mike Leach air raid with the Art Briles Baylor system. That's what they worked on, and that's what resulted in the quarterback, since he's been the OC at Missouri in 2016, putting up video game numbers. So I tracked this going all the way back to 2016 when this offense really took hold and Josh Heupel's success with quarterbacks.
Okay, some interesting info coming your way right now. So click that thumbs up button, like it.
Cooper Mays here. Hit like and subscribe.
We'll do so. Oh,
Coop here. First down.
I think it's the board, not me. Not a great carpenter shouldn't blame his tools, but I think we're having a little issue with the board. All right, so Josh Heupel did not sign Drew Lock, Mackenzie Milton, or Hendon Hooker.
Yes. So what propelled Josh Heupel to becoming a head coach at UCF? 2016 and 2017 at Mizzou. Drew Lock just absolutely torched the SEC. Missouri was averaging like 500 yards a game of total offense, but Josh Heupel inherited Drew Lock. Josh Heupel goes to UCF, goes undefeated his first year at UCF with Mackenzie Milton, who, by the way, went undefeated the year before with Scott Frost.
Mm-hmm.
Then he comes to Tennessee, and spoiler alert, Hendon Hooker was already signed by Tennessee. Jeremy Pruitt, and I think Kevin Steele in his 2 weeks as interim head coach went after Hendon Hooker. Funny enough, but Josh Heupel didn't.
I think people need to remember that Josh Heupel chose Joe Milton over Hendon Hooker.
That's a down. We'll get to.
And really, really tried to push him down our throats. All right, what down's next, Coop?
Second down.
Thank you, Coop. You're supposed to introduce yourself.
Cooper Mays here. Second down.
See, something's wrong with the board. All right, he did sign Dylan Gabriel, but initially wanted to start Brandon Wimbush over him at UCF in 2019. This sounds like a guy who fell in love with his favorite quarterback, which would have been Gabriel.
Yes, and this actually gives you a little read into what might happen this year with Aguilar. He signed Dylan Gabriel, who was a freshman, actually at the behest of Mackenzie Milton, who was tight end and knew about Dylan Gabriel coming out of high school. So he kind of Mackenzie Milton recruited Dylan Gabriel. And Josh Heupel didn't want to start a true freshman. So he went for Notre Dame grad transfer Brandon Wimbush in the portal that year. And in 2019, all signs were Dylan Gabriel as a true freshman was better than Brandon Wimbush as a senior. But Josh Heupel went and signed Wimbush. He was the older guy. Josh Heupel went with him. And UCF struggled early because of it. And eventually they had to go full term with Gabriel. And then the offense returned back to what it was. But yes, Josh Heupel picking Brandon Wimbush over Dylan Gabriel was a really bad sign in 2019 because it was based on him just going for the portal and finding the guy and still not doing any evaluations in practice and who outperformed who.
David says, so should we pass on Faison? I don't know that you should pass on him yet, but I've heard mixed reviews about him. I think he's one of those guys that's a really, really, really good kid, but a decent quarterback. But that'll help you a lot of times because trust me, I've covered recruiting. It's a lot easier to give somebody a star if they pick up the phone every once in a while and give you an update on their recruitment. That's just facts. I mean, that doesn't sound right, and it shouldn't be like that. But Caleb, that's where things are.
Yeah, no, I mean, absolutely. But it also helps with if they're that type of person, they're also that type of person when they're in college in terms of intangibles with teammates. They're not going to pull a Nico Iamaleava, which, as we found out yesterday, didn't just ghost Tennessee for 24 hours, but told a teammate before the on-3 report leaked that he was going to enter the transfer portal. And didn't tell Heupel.
All right. Next, what down, Coop?
Tennessee center Cooper Mays here. Third down.
Hey, the board worked. They picked Joe Milton. He picked Joe Milton over Hooker. I mean, we've said this ad nauseum. That was a mistake.
That was not just a mistake. That was an agenda because it was. I'm just going to bring this up to you guys because I really have to insist this and I really have to drive this home. There are a lot of reports that Joe Milton did not outperform Hendon Hooker in fall camp. And Heupel almost lost the team for starting Joe Milton. And Dave, I'll say something to you that I haven't said before, and I don't know where you land on this. If Joe Milton doesn't get hurt against Pitt and they don't move to Hendon Hooker and they stick with Joe Milton that whole year, not only do I think they go 4-8 or 5-7 instead of 7-6, I think Josh Heupel never gets the team back for that.
He may not. And if you look back at Philip Fulmer's tenure, the beginning of the end was when he wanted to go with Eric Ainge over Rick Clausen because the players believed in Clausen. And that was one of the only stories I've covered where players would like pull you aside and they would say, I got to tell you something, man. I mean, we don't want the Ainge guy. Now, Ainge turned out to be a great player and better than Rick Clausen, so I'm not knocking him. Before I get to fourth down, David had a good point. Faison has a Geno Smith comp, not bad. But but Geno Smith in college, fantastic. But in the pros, can he win you a Super Bowl? I don't know. So by that rationale, is Faison a guy that can win you a national championship? I don't think so.
Well, so look, he did put up, we talk about video game numbers. He played for Dana Holgorsen at West Virginia, and he did put up video game numbers at West Virginia. So the only problem with Geno was he had terrible intangibles during that time. So the minute things went south, he quit on the team. I don't think Faison, from what I've heard, is the type that would do that.
No, but I've heard, I mean, maybe he matured along the lines, but I've heard great things about Geno Smith's character since he's been in the league.
Sometimes people grow up. I mean, it's just, he didn't have good character early when he was with the Jets. He didn't have it early. Like, he bragged about how he didn't need to study film because he was so good. He openly said that his rookie year.
Ew. All right, what down, Coop?
All SEC center Cooper Mays here. Fourth down.
All right. Nico Iamaleava debacle. You're going to rip on Josh Heupel for this, but to me, that was out of his control, completely unforeseen, and there's no way he could have predicted it.
I agree. It's okay. Here's how I'm going to tell the story. You know, some things like in a vacuum, you would let it slide, but in an overall context, you realize it's a problem. Is that fair to say, Dave?
Very fair.
Yes. So Nico Iamaleava, the signing, it blowing up in his face. If that was just the only thing, I'd say, move on. It's not his fault. But like when you factor in the fact that of all the other misses I said he had, Brandon Wimbush, Joe Milton, not signing the three best quarterbacks he's had, and you consider that he pushed for the university to open up the checkbook to get Nico. When, by the way, I want to point this out. The intangible issue with Nico, look, they had to know that somewhat when they were recruiting him off field. You don't think Nico's dad was already proving himself to be a problem when they were trying to sign him?
You don't think that they wanted a private plane so they didn't have to fly commercial? And that's what Tennessee ultimately went to the legal system about, and they won. But, I mean, you can fly commercial, can't you?
Yes.
I'll even put you in first class, but I don't have to give you a plane that could be used for recruiting. And instead, it's flying to California so that you can come visit, which was technically recruiting. I know, but I could recruit other people if you could fly commercial.
what we're gathering is that Heupel has a sense of arrogance about him, that he doesn't believe intangibles is a factor with quarterbacks at all. And I think a lot of these quarterbacks we're talking about, Dave, intangibles is what kept them from being great. And Heupel can only measure the physical tools. I mean, Hendon Hooker Hendon Hooker is almost Peyton Manning level with intangibles, isn't he? Like with leadership and everything like that.
Totally agree. And I didn't think that at first. I mean, it wasn't that I heard anything bad, but I was really impressed. By the way, Lady Vols pick up a new commitment jersey, Wolfenbarger, which was just a great name. Were there any winners in the Nico saga? Now, Arkansas wants its cash back from Madden, and I don't blame them at all. And I hope they win that lawsuit. Nothing personal against the family, but basically you had the short window, Caleb, of a year or two, where players had the power. And they said, you've got to pay me to come to your school instead of you've got to pay me after I prove myself. That's unfortunate.
Yes, no, it is. It is. It's and look, it could ruin college football because, Dave, here's the thing. I'm not like an incentive-based contract guy most of the time, but when the contracts get out of whack, you have to go there because what's ruined the NBA, Dave? How many players have gotten that $200 million deal and just stopped caring once they got their money?
It seems like it happens in every sport every single year, whether it's basketball, whether it's baseball. It just to me is absolutely bizarre. How somebody, I guess it's human nature to get to that point. And when you've got 500 million sitting in the bank, you don't work as hard. But to me, that sports is not about making a bunch of money. It's about winning championships. I know players that didn't make $1 in the NFL, didn't make $1 from NIL because it wasn't around. And they still talk. That's why I wrote the book, Celebrate 98. That they still talk about how special that moment was. And I'll give you another weird example. Would you think a championship from the Tennessee Thundercats was impressive? They were an indoor team, and the league had 5 teams in it, just 5. One folded midway through the season. So you're winning the championship among 3 other teams. Would you think that was a big deal?
I wouldn't. But are you telling me it is?
I was in Omaha, and I would tell you those players partied like it was 1999. They won a championship, and a lot of them had never won one before, and it meant an awful lot to them. That's what sports should be about. This day in Tennessee sports history is right now, and it's brought to you by our friends at Sports Treasures. Let me tell you something about Sports Treasures. You have absolutely got to get on board with Sports Treasures. Over 5 million sports treasures right there. And you can find exactly what you would like. You're absolutely going to love it. And little man Stewart is going to be there, not this Saturday, but the next Saturday. So you'll want to check that out for sure. This day in Tennessee sports history is now.
This day in Tennessee sports history.
It's cool, baby. It's cool.
Now you know, and knowing is half the battle. The Dave Hooker Show with Caleb Calhoun, Off the Hook Sports.
This day in Tennessee sports history, Caleb, what do you got?
A happy 70th birthday to one Ernie Grunfeld.
Oh, how cool is that?
Yeah, turned 70 today. Interestingly enough, obviously, I don't need to tell anybody his resume, but he was obviously part of the Ernie and Bernie show with Bernard King in the late 70s. That was probably the first time Tennessee basketball was ever a real true draw as a program.
Did you know that he was very involved with the Bruce Pearl hire?
I didn't, but it didn't surprise me because Bruce Pearl knew Ernie Grunfeld because they were both in Milwaukee at the time.
Yep. Quality Tire Pros serving Chattanooga's community since 1957. All major brands of tires, full service automotive, brakeless alignments, oil changes, and more. QualityTirePros.com. QualityTirePros.com. Stop in, and when you do, tell Bo that Dave Hooker and Off the Hook Sports said hello. Coming up, Madden may have to chunk out $200,000. That's a lot of cash. That's well, I guess Nico made enough where they can offset it. It just seems like that whole thing's a family fund, that it all goes to Nick, and Nick decides where it goes. Kind of like I can say this because my last name's Hooker, but kind of like a pimp. That's the key. You don't ever pay, what I've read from documentaries, you don't pay hookers. you buy them what they want. So that way they always have to come to you for stuff.
Never thought about that. I mean, well, you pay him to leave.
Well, no, not a John. I'm talking the pimp. The pimp never pays a hooker. Like, you don't get a check every Friday.
Oh, yeah. You buy them their house and you give them their food and whatever they need. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I see what you're saying.
Pimping ain't easy.